Now, as early as 2006, scholars have noted the similarity between verbal abuse and, for example, music. Stimulus can be music, but it could be verbal abuse. If you listen to the abuser when he verbally abuses you, it is exactly like music. First of all, the abuser repeats many sentences again and again and again. There's a lot of repetition going on. It resembles music very much. And I call it the music of abuse. Exactly like music, abuse entrains the brain. These brain patterns in your mind render you a resonance of the abuser, an extension of the abuser. Your brain synchronizes with his brain. Your brain becomes one with his mind, with him. And from that moment, you're enmeshed. And training leads to enmeshment or merger or fusion in a relationship. The minute you're enmeshed, you no longer exist as an independent entity in any meaningful sense of the word. Anyone who has been in an abusive relationship will tell you this, that the abuser controls their moods. The abuser makes them happy, makes them unhappy, makes them depressed, makes them whatever. You have handed control totally to your abuser via the process of shared fantasy, dissociative shared fantasy, and entraining. And these twin processes, the shared fantasy and the entraining, had rendered you a tool, a machine, a device used by the abuser. The entrainment, entraining you means reorganizing your mind. And this leads to something that I call emotional artifacts. I'll come to it in a minute. When the abuser entrains you, what he does, he accesses your mind and he activates certain brain patterns. He deactivates other brain waves. So he's reorganizing your mind in a way. The minute he does this, he generates emotions and cognitions. Normally, meddling with the brain, playing around with your mind, is bound to produce emotional reactions and cognitions, thoughts. And these are the abuser's doing. No one can stop this. As long as you're alive, you're going to emote, you're going to think. Many people, many scholars think that emotions are a subspecies of cognitions. But at any rate, you're going to have emotions, you're going to have cognitions. This is unstoppable. Not even the abuser can turn this off. But what the abuser does, having taken over your mind, he had rendered your emotions and your cognitions not yours, but his. So we call this non-autonomous cognitions in non-autonomous emotions, we call them, I call them artifacts. You continue to generate emotions and cognitions, you continue to experience them as authentic, as if they were yours, but they're actually not yours. They're induced in you by the abuser. So again, it's not intentional, it's just what predators do. It's like a shark. The shark doesn't analyze your blood before it pounces on you. Sharks, that's what they do. Predators, that's what they do. Abusers, that's what they do. They take over your mind and they generate artifacts, emotions and cognitions that you mistake for yours when they're not yours. From that moment, any cognition and emotion you have is actually a reflection of cognitions and emotions of the abuser, because the abuser has taken over your mind. And all the brain patterns and brain waves and so on and so forth in your mind are not yours at all. Obviously, you subjectively experience all these as if they were yours, but they're not. So if you are prone to something, it will be enhanced by the abuser. But very often, you will find yourself amazed at who you have become. You will feel estranged and alien as if it were not you anymore. Your brain will have become a clone of the abuser's brain. Now, everything I'm telling you is well documented in neuroscience. They studied the effect of music, as I mentioned, and they demonstrated that a single mind can take over a group of minds via music. They demonstrated that if you listen to a waltz, your brain will react with the same frequency as the waltz and actually will become a giant waltz machine or waltzing machine. a very strange imagery. The brainwaves will be cancelled, and the only brainwave remaining, the spike, it's called the spike, will be equal to the frequency of the waltz. That's why our bodies move when we listen to music, because we have no other waves, only this wave. And this wave becomes dominant and it moves the body. So in the study of entrainment or entraining via music, there are conclusive findings that show, one, that one mind can take over other minds via music, and two, that music can eliminate all autonomous brainwaves and induce a non-autonomous series of brainwaves from the outside. Music, simple music, a waltz, not verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is much more potent because it harps on your vulnerabilities. It reactivates your traumas. It's much stronger than music in many ways. There are other findings, very frightening findings. So I think that abuse is worse than music because of the exposure to abuse. Exposure surface is much bigger. How many times do you listen to the same song? But the exposure to abuse is much more extensive. The surface of the exposure, it's repetitive. Abuse creates pathways in the brain, physical pathways, neurological pathways, neural pathways. And this is how psychotherapy works as well. Talk therapy has the same effect on the brain. The brain is neuroplastic. It's much more neuroplastic than we had known. It's very reactive to sound, especially structured sound, which are meaningful. And so again, I have a video dated October 2020 about entraining. It's about the neuroscientific findings regarding entraining. You're invited to watch this video. It's only 15 minutes. I don't know why. And it describes these terrifying findings. We are far less independent than we like to think. We are far more influenced by outside stimuli than we have ever imagined. It's absolutely shocking. So there is no doubt in my mind that the abuser has a massive impact via entraining on the victim's mind to the point of taking over it. But the activity of the mind continues, regardless. So you continue to generate emotions, and you continue to believe that they are yours, only they're not yours anymore. Cognitions, thoughts, ideas, which you then appropriate and feel that you own, but this is a delusion, an illusion. The waves of the abuser, the brain waves, are reflected in your brain. Your brain had become a clone. You will interpret everything as yours, and to avoid anxiety, to avoid dissonance, you will stick to it, even though the truth is none of it is you anymore. The abuser is anxious. Most abusers suffer from anxiety, including psychopathic abusers. If the abuser is anxious, you will become anxious. If he's narcissistic, you will become narcissistic. You'll begin to mirror the abuser. You will become the abuser. It's a process of becoming, enmeshment. There are big studies about folie à deux, madness in two, shared psychotic disorder. We know that people become clones of each other. There is even a study, a famous study on the physiological level. Men, women who had been put in the same building, they were nursing students. Their menstruation, their period, synchronized. They all had period on the same day. We are synchronization animals. We're synchronized beings. We sync into each other. We sync with each other. We become one in social groups, and we always become one. We always become a hive. We always create colonies. We hold ourselves to be an infinitely more advanced life form than ants or bees, but the truth is we're not on the biological level at least. There is a colony element, a hive element that we tend to deny and ignore because we live in an individualistic age. The individual is God, the individual is the idol, so we would never admit that we are actually nothing but cogs in the social machine. As the object relations scholars in Britain in the 1960s, this is nonsense. What we call individual, what we call self, is actually relational. It's the outcome of interactions with numerous other people. It's a Venn diagram. These two circles, yeah? We are the common area. So it's ridiculous to claim that we are, not reacting to outside influences and so on and so forth. It can't happen. The emotions that you experience are yours, but they're actually not yours. If you're exposed to an abuser, the emotions you're experiencing are the abuser's. These are artifacts. Once a shared fantasy is over, you are still faced with a problem because the shared fantasy is a dissociative state. You simply don't remember. You did not generate working memory or long-term memory. Memory is the foundation of identity, and identity is your bulwark. It's your defense against artifacts, against intrusion from the outside. Identity is protected by boundaries. Identity is where I end and you begin. If you don't have an identity, you're wide open to attack. If you don't have memory, you don't have an identity. And this is the first thing. Then the abuser disables your memory. So the disruption to memory in the dissociative state creates what we call identity disturbance. And then you're not able to resist intrusion by the abuser. But even when the abuser is gone, you still cannot reconstruct this period adequately. There's no ability to do it because you don't have memory. There's no memory. So would that dissociative state increase during periods of abuse? Are we more likely to forget abuse? You're likely to forget anything the abuser would like you to forget. Sometimes the abuser wants you to not forget the abuse. He wants to teach you a lesson kind of condition. Sometimes he wants you to forget the abuse because he's in a love bombing stage or a grooming stage. The abuser decides, not you. So it is the abuser who is the decision maker. The abuser's control is total. There have been studies about entraining where we were able to reconstruct a musical piece from the EEG wave patterns of the brain. One of our researchers constructed a Mozart piece just by being given the EEG, the printed EEG. So now what is a musical piece? A musical piece has many voids, has many empty spaces. So a musical piece is a kind of simulation of memory and dissociation. Now consider the abuser's music. The abuser's music has empty moments with no sound, silent treatment, for example, and moments with sound, but verbal abuse. But the abuser decides whether this particular bit of music, the music of his abuse, is Mozart or Bach or Deep Purple. It is the abuser's sole decision and choice. So the abuser directs your dissociation. Your dissociation is directional. It's as if he's producing a movie of some kind. The typical reaction is very complex. And what happens after the shared fantasy is over is even more complex. I've been thinking, I do it from time to time. It's interesting that abuse has a musical element. You remember the myth of Narcissus? Narcissus' partner was Echo. Echo simply echoed whatever he said. So there was Narcissus and there was Echo, who echoed everything he said. And that's a perfect metaphor for brain entrainment, don't you think? I think the repetition element is critical in both music and in verbal abuse. And I think abuse is a form of music. So you can be made to feel love and obsession that you don't genuinely feel. It's an artifact. It's a kind of projection. You experience these as yours, of course. It's inconceivable to you that you might have been hijacked or snatched. It's inconceivable to you. You still maintain the core of I am. So you would take ownership of these intrusive thoughts and emotions. Think of it as a virus. When the virus enters the body, it penetrates a healthy cell. Now, the healthy cell doesn't say, excuse me, you're a virus, get out of here. We don't tolerate immigration. No, the healthy cell accepts the virus and begins to copy the virus, replicate it. The healthy cell replicates the virus. It becomes a machine for copying the virus because the healthy cell doesn't make a distinction between itself and the virus. The healthy cell says, if you are here, then you must be me. You must be me because you're made of DNA, you're made of RNA, so you must be me. There's no other explanation. I mean, you're here. Surely it's me. So I'm going to copy you. Many people, many victims describe to you this sense of inner battle, a civil war, as if they're fighting themselves somehow. They feel torn. They feel ego incongruent. They feel like they're falling apart. They feel, you know, as if there's a schism, a break. And they don't understand why, but actually they are at war with an invader. They're fighting off an invasion. They're battling a pathogen coming from the inside, implanted in them by the abuser. Again, with the example of the virus, the cell sees a package of DNA or RNA coming its way, and it's a virus. And so the cell says, wait a minute, RNA is what I typically do. Like emotions is what I typically do, yeah? And so the cell says, okay, RNA is what I typically do, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to begin to copy the RNA. But this particular RNA is the virus. So it's a mistake. The cell is making a mistake. And when you say these are my emotions, you're making the same mistake. You say emotions is what I typically do. So if I feel emotions, they must be mine. And I'm going to own these emotions. I'm going to adopt them. I'm going to act accordingly. Even when the abuser is gone, this self-deception continues because you don't have memory. You don't have the glue that holds your identity together. It's gone for that period of abuse. So you don't have any firewall. You don't have a way to fight back these emotions, to tag them as alien, not you. They linger. They linger because you don't have memories of being you. They have been eradicated, wiped off the blackboard. During this period, you don't have memory. During this period of your relationship, the shared fantasy, your relationship with the abuser, you don't recall being you. You have memories of being the abuser, but not memories of being you. Even when you think that you have memories of being you, these are actually memories of being the abuser. It's pretty shocking. But we are beginning in clinical psychology, we're beginning to accept this. It's like programming, cult programming in a way. So there's prolonged grief, a disorder, because you mourn two things. You mourn the self-love that you had experienced, because the narcissist allowed you to experience it, allowed you to experience true self-love of an idealized you. You fell in love with this idealized image that the narcissist has created of you. You fell in love with yourself through his gaze, and it proved to be irresistible and addictive. So you mourn this, but even more importantly, you mourn the missed time. You mourn the lost time. There's a period, there's a hiatus, there's a lacuna, there's a vacuum where you should have been, and you are not. It is a years-long vacuum in long-term relationships with abusers. But in this period, in your time with the abuser, in your involvement in the during your involvement in shared fantasy, you did not really exist in any meaningful sense of the word. The abuser has taken over. He had supplanted you, substituted for you. You became a clone. You did not really exist. You lack functional memory because there's nothing to remember of your own. You felt very often that you behave in ways which are alien to you. And this process is called estrangement. You felt derealized very often.